Good day, family. Before we begin this final series, I want to share a brief thought. This is our 12th and final lesson in our series on gratitude, and I'm a little sad, I must admit. I'm a little sad to see it come to an end. Yet I'm also grateful for God's faithfulness, grateful for God's goodness, and grateful for the opportunity we've had to spend these weeks together reflecting on gratitude together. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. Each of the lessons in this 12 series stands on its own, but together they form a biblical picture of gratitude as a discipline of the heart. Let me begin by asking you two questions. What does it actually look like to have a heart trained in gratitude? That's question one. Question two, and what happens when gratitude becomes more than an occasional response and grows into a daily discipline? This is video number 12 in our series, Gratitude. Today's lesson is titled, A Heart Trained in Gratitude. Let's consider the closing. I want us to look at a formed heart. As we come to the final lesson in this series, Scripture brings everything together. Gratitude is not meant to be a temporary focus, it's meant to become a trained posture of the heart. Not something we visit occasionally, but something that shapes how we live daily. Now, let me give you some biblical grounding. Biblical grounding for consistent gratitude. Paul would say it this way: continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it with thanksgiving. That's Colossians 4 and verse number 2. That verse captures the essence of this series. Gratitude is not occasional, it is sustained. It is not reactive, it is intentional. Psalms 145, David says, I will extol you, my God and my King, and bless your name, listen to this, forever and ever. Psalms 145, verses 1 through 4. That is not a moment, that is a pattern. Now, why does this matter for the long run? Life will continue to shift, seasons will change, expectations will rise and fall, challenges will come and go, but a heart trained in gratitude does not collapse under those changes. Why? Because it has learned where to look, it has learned what to remember, and how to remain steady. Paul reminds believers to think on what is true, honorable, and praiseworthy. Philippians 4 and verse 8. Gratitude trains the mind in that direction. Here's a core truth for this final lesson. A heart trained in gratitude remains steady because it has learned to recognize God's faithfulness in every season. Training produces endurance. Let's consider gratitude as a lifelong discipline. Gratitude is not something you master, it's something you maintain. Psalms 105 calls God's people to remember, recount, and declare his works. Psalms 105 verses 1 through 5. Not because God forgets, but because we do. Gratitude keeps faith active. It keeps faith aware and responsive. Consider with me a enduring framing here. Long-term faith is not sustained by intensity. It is sustained by discipline. Gratitude protects the heart from becoming hardened, distracted, or disengaged. The Hebrew writers reminds us to run this race with endurance. How? By fixing our eyes on Jesus. Hebrews 12 verses 1 and 2. Gratitude helps keep that focus clear. By way of application, Please reflect on what this series has been forming in you. Have you treated gratitude as a response or embraced it as a discipline? Are you now more aware of God's faithfulness than when you began? Will gratitude remain intentional after this series ends? Training only matters if it continues. If this series has been helpful to you, please know I've written more that follows along this same path of spiritual formation. Lessons that are meant to be returned to, not just reading once. I'll place those resources below for you in the description of this video. Here's a final word of encouragement for this series. Gratitude is not a personality trait. It is not dependent on ease. It is not a discipline that forms faithful endurance. Gratitude is what we've been called to, and this is what it means to be formed to fight. Thank you so much for spending time with me.